Hello and welcome to the Energy Connect studio at ADIPEC 2024. I'm delighted to have sitting next to me in the studio today, Fahmi Al Shawwa, the CEO of Immensa. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
And to start off, what does Immensa do and how did it become MENA's largest digital manufacturer?
So we get asked this question a lot. The easiest way to say it is we give our clients the freedom of choice. So we allow them to really sort of procure spare parts, give them flexibility of their supply chain by digitizing spare parts and producing them on demand.
Now, as someone who's been in the industry for several years, what kind of fundamental shifts do you see within the energy spare parts market today?
We've been doing this for the last 8 years. And I want to say over the last 2 to 3 years, we've seen a very big uptake in terms of adoption, acceptance, and willingness to really go down the digital supply chain. And there's many factors that played into it. One is, of course, standards coming in. The other thing is the cost of supply chain. But I think the biggest thing is just the awareness and the openness of companies in the energy sector to really tackle their supply chain, which is getting more complex with time.
Right. Now, what makes digital warehousing and advanced manufacturing the right solution especially for your customers around this region?
Across this region and beyond, I think the biggest challenge today is in the logistics, shipping, supply chain, the disruption and the cost. In terms of why is it a good solution? The companies in the energy sector tend to be critical in nature. Their operations are critical. So what they end up doing is investing a lot of money in ensuring that they have excess and redundancy in spare parts,
right?
Which means we're sitting on billions and billions of dollars worth of unproductive assets, spare parts sitting in their warehouses. By adopting digital inventories, production on demand, you immediately reduce the amount of capital that's tied up and you make operations much more effective, much more efficient. Significantly less loss of revenue from downtime in operations.
That's a very important point. And how are you working with NOCs to support localization initiatives and how does that support OEMs?
So one of the biggest factors, there's different things we tackle. Number one, obviously, is reducing the number of spare parts, which means reducing a lot of the costs in actually sourcing them. The second part you touched on, which is very important, is localization of industries. By converting parts from being produced internationally and shipped to actually produced in the local market, whether it's in the UAE, in KSA, Oman, Norway, US, and so on, you actually enable production of these parts locally, which obviously has a lot of ripple effects. Employment goes up, productivity goes up, contribution to GDP goes up, and less on the supply chain. And so that helps a lot the end users, national oil companies. When it comes to the OEMs, it also allows them to capture revenue that was generally lost. You have parts that are obsolete, you have parts that are difficult to source, legacy parts, where you're allowing them to produce locally, which means this is revenue that they would have foregone, that they're actually capturing.
Right. Now, as you spoke about the benefits of digital warehousing, one of the factors that also comes into play is the security aspect of it. So what are your thoughts on that?
So there's two aspects of which security: the security of the data or security of the supply chain. So in terms of the supply chain, there's always the security of disruption in supply chain, not getting parts. So you end up having a national security issue where you have no power and so on. If we come to data, the security of the data is very important. We deal in a sector that there's digital assets going out. If these digital assets are corrupted, then you're getting parts that are actually will not function as required. We work with the top tier oil and gas companies and power generation companies, which means we have to adhere to the highest standards. So we invest significant amount of resources and money to ensuring an overall holistic security infrastructure.
Yeah, and my next question was about that. If you can dive a little deeper into how you are investing in the security and the technology aspect of your platform.
So we start from there's different layers of it. And you start with the very basic sort of how do you protect against security of your ERPs? How do you ensure that security of the assets and the files is going? And these are solutions are available and plenty with global companies. We've also gone the extra level where we've done what we call ethical hacking and red hacking. We work with some of the top companies in the world that we have continuous checking on our systems to ensure that is good. And the third one is we work a lot on localization. We talk about localization. It's not just the production of parts, but also the localization of where the content is saved. So when we work with Oman, we ensure that the servers, the data is actually stored locally in highly secure databases. Same thing in the UAE. So it's very important for us. When we talk about localization, it's not just a marketing gimmick. It's actually a holistic localization aspect.
Now, all this creates not just a market for local talent, but also supports the digital economy. And so, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that's the way of the future, and the future is now. I mean, if we take a step back, and I always say, if we close our eyes and envision the world in 6 years, it's going to be unfathomable for us to imagine that the world used to send parts across the world, physical parts. It's going to be sending files and producing it locally, and that plays a very big factor in digital economy, because you're fabricating digitally, you're sending files, logistics digitally. The whole world's moving into digitization. And I always say, if you look at movies and CDs or music, we used to send CDs across the world. That doesn't exist. Same thing's going to happen to the physical world. You're going to send files and just digitally produce it.
Going back to a point that you made at the beginning about the journey of Immensa across 8 years, and you've very successfully covered that journey in both industrial manufacturing and digital spaces. When you look back, what are your reflections?
Reflection. I mean, there's a lot of reflections, because you have a very turbulent and uncertain path. When we started this journey back in 2016, and actually we are exactly 8 years to the week. We were set up on November 7th, 2016. Initially, when you talk about digital inventory, it didn't exist as a concept, and there was no names for it. So there was a lot of, are we doing the right thing? Is this a big bet? We focused on 3D printing of parts. And as we saw the market progress, as we say, awareness built, I'm very blessed to have a fantastic team that foresaw this coming.
Finally, we are here at ADIPEC, the world's largest energy event. What are you showcasing, and what are your thoughts?
We're trying to, as opposed to showcasing, we're trying to cater to our clients and customers, and try to build some awareness, educate them more than anything else. We feel that we're trying more of a service, is to build that awareness, as opposed to try and sell anything. So that's really been our objective here, working with different organizations and so on. So that's our goal of ADIPEC. And I mean, every year ADIPEC exceeds our expectation every time, over and over again.
That's great to hear, Fahmi. Thank you so much for your insights and for your analysis.
Thank you for having me. It's
Thank
a pleasure.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to follow us on social media and at energyconnects.com. I'll be back with more studio interviews from ADIPEC 2024. Until then, goodbye.